Story of Shiloh. It was the last freehold in North Carolina. Since the Civil War, black folks owned this land. We own this land. Only the rich folks want to come and take it. They want to make it into a business paradise. And with the working people of Shiloh, they want to work.
Shiloh is a small majority black freehold community in Wake County, North Carolina. It is right next to the Research Triangle Park, a high-tech area of development, and the Raleigh-Durham International Airport, two areas with soaring real estate prices. After the Civil War, freed slaves formed the community of Shiloh. Historically, people farmed and grew their own food, and later began traveling to regional industrial areas for jobs. Life has been hard, but good in Shiloh, as it is a united community. People have owned some land and have often owned their homes. To the people who formed this community, Shiloh meant refuge from slavery and oppression. Today, Shiloh citizens know that something has killed dozens of residents. All farming has stopped. Since August of 1988, Shiloh residents have lived in fear that they are being exposed to toxic contaminants in their water, dumped in their community by Coppers, a wood treatment company.
It's just been terrible, to tell you the truth. And I've been afraid to bathe with it. Sometimes I would even take my son down to my mother's and give him a bath because I was afraid of bathing with it, and especially cooking with it.
So we canned our vegetables and all from the garden to run us through the winter time. So now at this particular time we're scared to do that because of the contamination in the ground. We think that also come up and be in the vegetables.
This fish pond that's behind my house, the fish in it that are so toxic that there's nowhere in North Carolina is it approved to burn, bury, or store the fish that is in my pond that my family has been eating.
The Shiloh community has effectively fought against what they call toxic terrorism by coming together and working through their own organization. Shiloh is one of many African American communities in the U.S., but especially the South, where hazardous waste sites are disproportionately found. Drawing from EPA and U.S. Census data, the United Church of Christ published a nationwide study in 1987 that concluded, race is the most important factor that determines the location of commercial hazardous waste facilities. Also, 3 out of every 5 African Americans live in communities with uncontrolled waste sites. The Black Belt South, or the majority African American counties that form a crescent shape in the South, is the area most at risk in the entire country. Of the 50 states, North Carolina ranks next to last in both the average manufacturing wage and the percentage of unionized workers. The corporate toxic terrorism on the Black Belt community of Shiloh puts the residents there even more at risk, since they already face the double oppression for being black and for being workers.
It's very hard to make a living. A lot of people who live in Shiloh work in industries that pay minimum wage or slightly higher, $5 or something like that an hour, and most people have to work part-time jobs too.
If we get sick or anything, we're not even able to pay the doctors and the hospitals and all like that when we're having to pay $1,000 a day or whatever the case may be.
The Shiloh community has long recognized the need for organization to address these oppressive conditions.
Shiloh has a history of struggle. From the end of slavery, people, struggling to own property, the community just struggling to make their own survival. The community had a co-op, where people bought and sold their goods there.
In 1985, the Shiloh community, under the leadership of women from the Home Demonstration Club, formed the Shiloh Coalition for Community Control and Improvement to unite against the development attacks on the community, such as industrial and airport growth, property value inflation, road development, zoning changes, and foul and depleted water. The organization achieved a number of victories on roads and zoning. The Black Workers for Justice provided organizational assistance, helping the Shiloh Coalition to develop its course of action. The Shiloh Coalition was closely united to the church, which has been a unifying force in the community.
The main goal of the Shiloh Coalition for Community Control and Improvement is just that, community control an improvement to maintain a certain standard of living in the community and have control over what the future of our community will be like.
Today, the Shiloh Coalition is focusing much of its organizing efforts on the toxic terrorism in their community.
So one of the first steps was gathering information and investigation, and then shortly following that, meetings to let people know, what had going on, and make them aware of the contamination of the wells, and then set up a program with how to deal with that.
The Shiloh Coalition, which includes workers and union representatives, quickly saw the need for the community to bring together its own body of information on the water contamination. In April of 1989, the group organized a public hearing. This event combined the input of community members, workers, and their allies.
We invited different elected representatives there to hear what was going on. We had panelists who were labor leaders in the area, community leaders, legal attorneys, just people who we've had dealings with, just to come and collect testimony about exactly what was going on in the community, how this contamination issue had affected the community, and that was a major stepping stone for us.
With the information they gathered, the Shiloh Coalition pieced together the details of the contamination. From 1968 to 1975, the Koppers Company processed treated wood using PCP or pentachlorophenol. Workers in the treatment building sprayed a mixture of PCP and IPE or isopropyl ether onto wood. PCP solution that didn't penetrate wood was wasted directly to lagoons and a pond on site. From these areas, the contamination easily traveled to underground streams throughout Shiloh. In other sections of the plant, workers cut, drilled, and sanded the wood. Koppers bought the plant in 1962, providing the first source of industrial jobs in the area. Many Shiloh residents worked at the Koppers plant, and for them, the health effects have been severe.
All the ones I know that worked in the treatment process that I knew that were good friends, they just dropped dead.
A lot of the illnesses that we see there, well, the people that we know who have died, who worked at the plant, we just know that they were relatively young. The sicknesses were not something that went on over years.
As the Shiloh Coalition uncovered the basic facts of the contamination, they also uncovered the details of a long-term information blackout on the part of Koppers and some governmental agencies. As early as 1972, Koppers was recording the existence of PCP in wells at the plant. In 1980, the EPA identified high levels of PCP in the Koppers Pond sediment, 6,000 times that acceptable in groundwater. The EPA's investigation was considered complete when Koppers agreed to remove waste piles and contaminated pond sediment. However, Koppers never removed any sediment, only the waste piles. One chief official even declared the case closed.
There was not an effort to test wells until actually September of 1987, which is the first time that off-site wells, possibly 8 wells in the area, including the church's well, were found to be contaminated with what at that point were called low levels of pentachlorophenol.
But it wasn't until August of 1988 that the EPA even informed Shiloh residents of the PCP contamination, 16 years after Koppers first discovered it and 8 years after the EPA did. At this time, the Shiloh site had the highest severity EPA ranking for groundwater contamination of any site in North Carolina. As residents unraveled the confusing timetable of this poisoning, they realized how long this situation had remained ignored. They found that no government agency had given consistent and accurate information about health risks, nor had they admitted when there was a problem or investigated in a timely manner.
And I saw a pamphlet that was published by the state of North Carolina on fishery, and the Medlands Pond had worse dioxins in the fish than anywhere in the state of North Carolina. And the thing that really gets me is to think that the EPA came out and they got our fish and they analyzed our fish, and booklets was written on them that was given to other people across the state, but the Medlands never knew anything about it. And it really boils me to think that this was public knowledge to everybody except the people that are eating the fish.
Occasionally, we will get a press release after the press has gotten it. Occasionally, we will get a letter after the press has gotten it.
Workers have come forth with the details of the information blackout that they endured while working at the plant.
Until the publication on the contamination, I wasn't even aware of what chemicals they were using.
Coppers never told me anything about it in health working at the plant. They should have been telling us at least once a month or every 6 months this stuff could be hazardous to your health or whatever. But they haven't been educating the people on it, kind of working condition we was in.
All they were concerned with was on the job injuries. If you didn't get hurt on the job from a saw or a nail or something like that, nothing else was, any concern.
Responding to requests and pressure from the Shiloh Coalition, the State Health Department conducted a cluster study to examine the health consequences of PCP exposure for people living close to the site. The study claims that there are no abnormal levels of cancer in Shiloh, yet fails to compare the levels with other similar areas. Nor did the study look at the other health effects of PCP exposure.
We feel like it was very premature to say that there is no health problem here. In fact, it was irresponsible to say that there's no health problem here, given the fact that a number of the problems we're not going to see for a long time.
Although the EPA continues to state that there are no health effects among Shiloh residents due to the contamination, they have notified numerous residents not to drink their well water or to take baths in it. Reputable studies indicate that Shiloh residents have been subjected to quantities that put them at risk. The well at the Shiloh Baptist Church has PCP contamination 31 times the level that causes cancer in animals, according to levels determined by a national toxicology study. 8 countries have entirely banned the production of PCP. Also present in commercial-grade PCP are dioxins, the most potent cancer-causing compounds known on Earth. Residents note an alarming rate of health problems occurring, often matching health effects of PCP and dioxins, such as cancer and circulatory problems.
A lot of people in this community, every other house, someone have died with cancer.
There's a high incidence of high blood pressure. A lot of people write that off as being typical of the African Americans, but for everybody to suffer from this, and that's what it is, children as well as adults, and I think there's something, there has to be a little more than that there.
From testimony gathered at the public hearing and with technical assistance from the Clean Water Fund, the Shiloh Coalition formulated a set of demands. These demands were submitted to the EPA and to all elected officials responsible to the community, such as officials in Morrisville, the adjacent municipality. Overall, the public hearing was a significant organizing event for the Shiloh Coalition.
It put the EPA on notice, one. It put the state on notice. It put Morrisville on notice. It let put the representatives on notice that we put you in office and this is going on here and we need you to be accountable to our community. You come to us for our vote. Now this is what we need you to do for us. And we got pretty good response by doing that. And I think it helped the community too, to let people feel or to let people know that they're not isolated.
In keeping with the rights guaranteed to people by the Clean Water Act and the Superfund legislation, the Shiloh Coalition has demanded that an alternate water supply be provided, that all wells be tested, that all contaminants be tested for, that community members be part of the decision-making process, and that a full cleanup be conducted. They have also demanded a community and worker health screening. In the spring of 1990, the union at the plant tried to get a company-paid health screening during contract negotiations, but were told that the cost was too high. Overall, due to the widespread abuse and repression of Southern workers, union members at the plant have feared losing their jobs, and this has kept them from forcing the company to be accountable to both the workers and Shiloh residents.
I think the union could have done more to address the health problem of coppers. The people in the union was too afraid to make too many complaints about the working condition. Afraid to make lose the job, lose the position, or whatever.
EPA has not, there is not going to be a further action of doing health screening.
Because of a lack of response to its demands in general, but in particular for a health screening, the Shiloh Coalition, with support from the North Carolina Student Rural Health Coalition, has formed a health committee to organize its own screening and survey. The Shiloh Coalition has continued to gather accurate health information, and the community has organized a committee to apply for a technical assistance grant from the EPA to aid in gathering and presenting health and technical information to the community so that they can make informed decisions. In 1988, the State Superfund Agency put the copper site on the National Superfund list, a list of the 400 most highly toxic waste sites in the country. The plant in Shiloh continues to operate as part of the multinational Beezers Company, which has bought out coppers nationwide. Not only then does Beezers own the toxic pond in Shiloh, but all of the other 6 toxic copper sites across the country on the Superfund list.
I believe Mr. Beezer did a due diligence study of coppers before he purchased it, and I think he felt that it was a good buy.
The Shiloh Coalition is pressuring Beezers to be accountable to both the community and workers, since they now legally bear responsibility for the cleanup.
If they have messed up, I think that they ought to clean up. No more than right.
And then I would like to work with the community, and we are in the process of preparing newsletters and trying to respond to questions.
I have learned that dealing with Beezer, they don't always tell the truth.
I started working on the site in September 1988, and since that time with the quarterly monitoring and the work plan, we've probably spent in the neighborhood of $250,000, probably.
This beaver and copper, they'll spend $10 million to keep you from getting 10 cents.
I think the thing that also gets me upset is the fact that this company contaminates fish, contaminates surface water, contaminates groundwater, soil, people's wells. It's never been fined, it's never been penalized, it's never been cited for violating any state or federal regulation. The Division of Environmental Management has never even come out here.
From the Shiloh Coalition's interaction with the Coppers and Beezers corporations, they have discovered that the companies have followed the path of most other corporate contaminators, putting profit before people. However, the Shiloh Coalition has been able to force Beezers to pay for a connection fee for Morrisville water and to pay for installing more water lines. In an attempt to clean up toxic sites first, and then later get responsible companies to pay for it, the federal government has set up the Superfund process. However, because of the federal government's lack of a commitment to adequately fund this process, the EPA must bargain with industry to conduct investigations and then cleanups of toxic waste sites.
Well, I think EPA needs to come in and clean up. They haven't cleaned up one thing since this whole thing been going on.
The cost is a big factor in what Beezer is sampling. And they're sampling everywhere. That would be the next point for the contamination to migrate. From what I've seen, they are covering it. And I don't think it's going to skip a very long area.
Now, how do they know that the one that they missed was the one where it was contaminated?
You may not like the answer we're going to give you, but it's our job to find you an answer. We got 12 federal facilities. One federal facility has 500 sites on it. Now, there's no excuse that we can't answer your
Coupled
needs.
with the EPA's lack of resources and staff is an unwillingness on the part of EPA administration to challenge industry, thus making it necessary that communities struggle with EPA itself to force it to carry out its own stated objectives. Shiloh residents have learned the importance of group action in forcing agencies such as the EPA to be accountable to communities and workers.
Barbara Benoit from the EPA did talk to us, and it was after the coalition had really pushed and joined together, the Shiloh Coalition had joined together, and everybody was writing letters, and we heard a petition to Raleigh, to Dr. Levain and all, that the EPA has been involved in it now, and Barbara Minoy will talk to you now, that we used to didn't have any idea who in the EPA to get hold of.
The Shiloh Coalition has been successful in forcing the EPA to adopt a timeline for action, to hold an additional public hearing, to test for dioxins, and to communicate with residents.
It's taken communities like ours and workers to hold companies accountable and officials accountable, EPA accountable, and state officials, local officials, what have you, to ensure that these projects are brought to their attention and that cleanup can occur.
The Shiloh Coalition has also called on elected officials to respond to the toxic terrorism. The town commissioners and mayor of Morrisville, the municipality next to Shiloh, have generally not responded to the needs of the Shiloh people, but rather to the interests of corporate investors.
The motivations of Morrisville are strictly tax-based and money.
Morrisville exercised extraterritorial jurisdiction over Shiloh, since many Shiloh residents could not vote for Morrisville officials, but their actions directly impacted on the community of Shiloh. For example, industrial water lines, not residential as Shiloh residents need, were laid soon after the contamination issue became public. However,
we were not involved in any of the meetings, any of the decisions as to where the lines should go, or which households should be included or covered or hooked into the line. It was basically closed meetings with them, with no input whatsoever from anybody from the community.
Well, I certainly feel real positive about the installation of almost 4 miles of water mains.
Morrisville is requiring Shiloh residents, many of whom are elderly and on a fixed income, to annex into the town and pay high taxes on their inherited land.
And we've also taken a stance that with the lines that are being put in now, that people who are not annexed into the town of Morrisville should not be forced to annex simply to have access to the water itself, because people are not responsible for contamination. And we feel that basically this is a form of blackmail in order to force people to annex, in order to get water for something that they had no control over to start with.
A municipal corporation in North Carolina is a creature of the state, and it is a corporation. Its taxpayers are very much like the stockholders. If somebody wants the services, the urban services offered by the city, then they join in with the city.
The only reason I annexed due to the water. Well, I really don't think they're giving me anything by annexing.
The Shiloh Coalition has repeatedly asked the EPA to intervene in the struggle with Morrisville in order that the legal right to an alternate water supply be granted.
And we're aware that EPA sent a hand-delivered letter to Morrisville highly suggesting that they waive their annexation right in order to allow people to hook into the water line, because of the whole health risk factor there. Is there anything, or can EPA do something much stronger than simply send a letter to Morrisville to ask them to waive the annexation right? We know it can be done.
The federal government does not like to get involved in municipalities' business.
Only when the Shiloh Coalition has organized and petitioned the Town Council of Morrisville have they won any concessions from the town. The Shiloh Coalition has reduced the amount people have to pay for water hookup and has forced Morrisville to put in more residential water lines. The Shiloh Coalition has also called on other elected officials.
Jesse Helms felt that there was no problem. And the governor didn't deem it necessary to come to the public hearing. But some officials have been responsive. A few officials have been responsive. A few of them know that, the community of Shiloh, they got a certain amount of votes from the community, or they won a certain number of votes from that precinct. And we've made no qualms about, we voted for you, so when we call on you, you better be there. we have no problems telling people that we want you to be accountable to the community, and we'll vote on you based on how you support our community.
Because Shiloh is an unincorporated community, like many rural African American communities throughout the Black Belt South, it does not have as much local control and the political power it would have if it democratically controlled its own resources.
Not being incorporated, in my eyes, has been a barrier to the work because we've had to deal with a lot of problems we wouldn't have had to deal with if we were incorporated, namely zoning issues. If you're incorporated, you control how things are zoned around you. Therefore, you control what kind of development goes on around you. The relationship with the EPA and with Beezer would be totally different. There wouldn't be this backroom meeting atmosphere type thing. Things would be much more above board. People would know, what was going on.
Nonetheless, the Shiloh Coalition continues to fight for the will and needs of its citizens. Like dozens of other toxic sites across the country, the EPA has been willing to take decisive action only after community is destroyed. But Shiloh is different because people are fighting back and organizing.
You're looking at one of the best cases in the country of a community coming together and getting something done.
Clearly, we've seen from Shiloh that government is not going to play the leading role in ensuring that this environment is safe for us to live in, safe for our children to grow up in. It's only when grassroots people are organized, do stand up, do speak out, are determined to fight, are determined to do whatever it may take to get a situation cleaned up or to get attention drawn to an environmental problem, that things happen.
Overall, by their organizational strategy, the Shiloh Coalition has challenged the information blackout and gathered their own information, which they have used to educate the community. With this knowledge, they were then able to formulate and fight for their demands, which has forced the EPA, Morrisville, and the Beezers Company to act quicker and to be more responsive to the needs of the community.
If the Shiloh Coalition had not joined together and banded the community together, the black and the white together, we would have never accomplished anything.
They have a similar problem to this as far as the contamination. Just keep fighting. And if you don't have it in your community, don't let them come. I think if they really want for the coalition, I think some of the people would have just sat back.
This is going on all over. It's going on particularly in the South, in the Black Belt South, and poor working class communities. It is a struggle of self-determination. It is a struggle of controlling what goes on in your communities. On the whole, all the battles that we've fought, we've won a majority of them, and we're determined that we're going to win this war in the end.
Free, free, got to be free. 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 Well, here's the story of Shiloh. It was the last freehold in North Carolina. Since the Civil War, black folks own this land. We own this land. Only the rich folks want to come and take it. They want to make it into a business paradise. And with the working people of Shiloh, they want to work us all for a dime. They're not going to take it. So we're organizing the people of Shiloh, the sons and daughters of slaves. They're not going to take it. We're going to hold on to our heritage, hold on to our land and our future. Because self-determination, reservation and liberation and we're gonna be free, got to be free, 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 we got to be free.